Joining me, everyone. The morality of Nancy Pelosi, the new Speaker of the House, is what I want to talk about right now. She is on record as saying that she will not support a single penny to secure the southern border because she feels it's immoral to do so, because it runs against what she claims are American values. This isn't the first time that Nancy Pelosi has wrapped herself in moral language, almost religious sounding language. That's a tactic of the left, and it's entirely situational. They can intone moral righteousness when it suits their overall cause, and they can ignore conventional notions of morality when it doesn't. But more fundamentally, I actually think that Nancy Pelosi does believe that she is on the moral side, the right side, even if she cannot articulate, even to herself, what that side is. I mean, exactly why would it be immoral for a nation state to secure its national border? I suppose the only thing we can maybe discern from looking at the tea leaves on this would be that at the core of her contention that there is something somehow immoral about the nation securing its borders is the belief that the nation state itself is immoral, that there is something immoral about the whole idea of a people achieving independent sovereignty, control over their own house, and once that is achieved, deciding who enters that house or who doesn't, that somehow this idea is immoral. And perhaps subconsciously, the reason she believes it's immoral, besides the fact that it does lead to an unequal distribution of wealth, if you will, or creation of wealth in reality, based on the fact that some nations are going to be more or less successful than others, depending on a lot of factors, including the type of economic and, if you will, moral system that they embrace, that it actually, the whole principle itself is immoral, not just the fact that there's going to be an inequality of nations, which of course in her mind is immoral. I would suggest that it's normal, it's not necessarily moral, but the success of a nation, while there are unforeseen factors, largely depends upon the morality of the culture that that nation possesses, the religion that that nation possesses, if you will. And when I say religion, I don't necessarily mean formalized religion. It depends on the morality of the people of that nation. It was John Adams, and I'm paraphrasing, who said that our Constitution is not fit for people who don't have morality. It wouldn't function in a condition like that. So the American people have embraced moral principles that have made us more successful. That doesn't mean that we're better than anyone else's. I don't mean this from a chauvinistic standpoint. Anyone, any nation in the world can embrace similar moral values. Those moral values are universal. They transcend any one group, any one nation, any one religion. But the fact of the matter is, however it came about, through history, through chance, through consciousness, whatever, the American people embraced a set of values that have advanced us to the point where we are more successful as a whole. And thus we are, in many ways, different than other nations who are less successful. So part of that success is the contention, which is natural to any sovereign society, that we have a right to protect our national home, our national culture, our national language, our national way of life, because we've invested in it, because we paid for it, because we live here, because we have a right to determine our own lives and our own destinies on a microcosmic scale, but our national life and our national destiny on a macrocosmic scale. So Nancy Pelosi, as a left-winger, rejects that idea in favor of open borders, in favor of the idea that the nation state is somehow an anachronism, it's old-fashioned. Karl Marx would have referred to it as a false construct or a false consciousness, that it's artificial, and that the people of the world have to be taught a new way, a better way, which is to turn the entire planet into a one world ant colony. Now, I know she doesn't think that consciously, but isn't that what she's articulating when she says that the idea of securing a national border is immoral? What does she have in mind when she says that? And what is she offering as an alternative? Those are legitimate questions. The fact is that it is normal, it is natural to maintain and preserve a nation state, in the same way that you as an individual have a right to maintain and preserve your private property. And by the way, I want to thank Jeff Jacoby of the Boston Globe for citing me in his column this past yesterday, in which he argues that my contention that the national state is not like a private property. I mean, I point out that it's as normal and natural for a nation state to preserve and secure its borders and create a wall or a barrier to do that, as it would for the individual to secure their own border by locking their door or by locking their car door. His argument is, no, it's not, because the individual owns private property, which, by the way, is not necessarily true. I mean, I don't own the home I'm in right now. I rent it. So, it's not a matter of ownership. I mean, it's more, maybe it's more accurate to say the domicile where you reside, where you have a contract to live there. You have a right to decide who enters that domicile, and that's protected by law. But that somehow, because the nation is not property, it's not private property, it doesn't have those same rights. I would suggest it has nothing to do with private property. It has to do with the fact that to understand politics, you reduce it down to its most basic element, which is the family, the individual. What is in the best interest of the family can be seen as what is in the best interest of the nation, because the nation can only act on matters that are too big for a family to act on. We can't have a foreign policy and decide who enters the country, because we're only individuals. You have a nation. That's a basic function of a nation that does that in our stead. And to determine those policies, in America anyway, with our Constitution, we elect people, representatives, to make those determinations based upon our values. And if we change those values, we change who we elect. That's what elections are all about. So our government, acting as our agents, can decide questions of who enters the national home in the same way that they can decide questions of the budget, just like you and I as individuals look at our own checkbooks and decide our budget. They can project economic policy, just like you and I, the individual, take a look at our earnings and figure out how much we have to spend in the future and where we want to allocate our funds. And they can decide, to a certain extent, an overall moral and ethical code for a nation, although in those issues, traditionally in America, we prefer that those questions be dealt with on a more local or state level. That comes from the old Roman Catholic system of subsidiarity. However, we as individuals and as families make those decisions about what we believe to be moral and not moral, what we consider to be moral conduct and immoral conduct. In that sense, our society, as expressed through our elected officials, we empower them to make decisions on a limited basis within a constitutional framework on those self-same questions. So, when Nancy Pelosi, to bring us back to my original contention here, says that it's immoral and it runs against American values to build the wall, as she calls it could be a fence, I don't care what they call it. The point is that a nation state has a right to determine its borders. I'd like to see if our media, if our American citizen has enough awareness to call her on that and ask her to explain exactly what she means, what is not in our moral value to secure our national border. Anyway, I want to thank you for watching this afternoon, and have a good afternoon.